Ever wonder what the original language is? Maybe you've heard of the story as written in Genesis 11, verses 1 through 9. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick, and burn them thoroughly. And they made brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city, and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men built. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. Imagine that. The whole world shared one language. So, what was it? Currently, the earliest documented languages seem to be the Sumerian cuneiform language, which is considered a Semitic language. This is wedge clay writing. Some Bible researchers tend to think that Enoch, the shepherd of man from the days before the flood, brought back a new language, and they called it Enochian. The only argument against it, according to the same Bible, is that the languages were split long after Enoch, so Enoch would still have been speaking the original language. So would have Noah, for that matter, as well as his sons Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Let's ask a different question for a moment. What is the most advanced language in the world? The answer will surprise some, anger others, or confirm some people's beliefs. The answer is Hebrew. It is the only language where the letters are numbers, so the text can also be read in numeric code. That's pretty awesome. This is probably how numerology started, which makes more sense knowing that the letters are also numbers. This language has 22 characters, which is similar to how many pairs of chromosomes humans have. We have 23, but the 23rd is a sex chromosome that differs between males and females. Speaking of which, this language can also differentiate between masculine and feminine words. Some researchers have theorized that there might be a missing letter, but there would only be one real way to prove that. The story of this language is what makes this incredibly interesting. Supposedly, it was taught to the biblical Abraham, as mentioned in the book called the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, translated by the late Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. From the introduction, quote, there is evidence that these mysteries were taught to Abraham by Shem, along with the mystery of the calendar. So, Shem, son of Noah, who helped teach Abraham, would have been speaking the original language still. First thing people will notice is the idea that Shem, son of Noah, was still living in the time of Abraham. It is strange to think that there were humans that lived so long. But it is also mentioned in the apocryphal book of Jasher. These long lives are also attributed to gods and demigods in the Sumerian kings list, as well as Manetho's records of the first kings of Egypt. It's up to you to accept. For me, I accept all these works equally, a version of history remembered and passed on. The oratory described by the Sefer Yetzirah is a very long oratory that describes creating a golem, or a lifeless being. It does this by describing every part of the human body in a very long repetition of 4 vowel sound pairs. It takes such a long time to say that more than one person has to remember it so that one can rest while the other continues. It is said that it takes over a month to say. This long oratory is an oratory of human DNA, believe it or not. That's quite remarkable, and it can only be proven when the Orthodox Jews who hold it share it with their people. Then it will be confirmed. It would also seem that the golem would be a lifeless being because all life must pass through a female to exist. All life. Something else to think about. So this ancient language was said to be the language of the angels and taught to Abraham, with an oratory of DNA to prove how intelligent the language is. Amazing. I know some skeptic out there is going to say that angels are fairy tales. I'll say this. Angel is made up of two older words for ancient beings that made appearances on this earth. The Anunnaki and the Elohim, angels. The G is a connective letter or sound. Different cultures have different names for these beings. For example, the Native Americans call them star people. But let's get back to Hebrew. This language returned again with Moses and the Torah, otherwise known as the first 5 books of the Bible. As you may or may not know, this text also provides information in code, which some have already deciphered. It's out there on the internet if you're interested. I love the internet for that reason. Information is so readily available, unlike any other time that we know of. It is interesting that one of the Hebrew words for God, Yahweh, which has a few meanings, is also shared by some Native American cultures. Are these some of the lost tribes of Israel? As mentioned by the Sefer Yetzirah, and my previous video, Does God Exist?, this word for God, Yahweh, also means masculine and feminine. It correlates perfectly with the idea that energy is also masculine and feminine. Again, I'll point you towards the physics explanation I put out called Atoms to Black Holes, a study of energy through movement and opposites. It's a new concept to us, but the oldest concept by ancients. For example, Taoists believe the same thing as is shown by their yin and yang symbol. It represents masculine and feminine. My conclusion is this. Hebrew is the original language, taken away at Babel and returned with Abraham, then again with Moses in the Torah. The mysterious original language has been with us this whole time. It would mean that the ancient languages that are considered Semitic, like cuneiform, Akkadian, or Phoenician, are derived from the more advanced Hebrew. There's something else to think about. This is probably why the Jews are called the people of God, because they are speaking their language, the language of the angels, the Anunnaki, and the Elohim, the original language. Now, some Bible skeptics will say, impossible, it's all made up. Is it? In case anybody noticed, the mythological kingdom from the Bible called Israel is back. So, if you're interested in learning Hebrew, remember it's not just a Jewish language. It is the language of science. It is the language of those whom we were created in their image, as said in Genesis 1:26. The advanced beings mentioned throughout all of mythology. Here's that verse. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. Again, let us make man in our image. In case the logic hasn't set in, it also means we were never alone. I see that as good news. Some may find it hard to believe, and that's okay, but it shall prove itself eventually. In fact, the only real way of knowing if Hebrew is the original language is when they come back, what language will they be speaking? Funny how Anunnaki and Elohim became angels, became invisible spiritual beings, became aliens. We're not talking about the grays, folks. I have no idea when they'll return. I'm not a prophet. I'm just a random human asking questions and sharing my answers. Well, that's all for today. God bless you, and thank you so much for your time.